Tonight on First at 9 this Friday the 26th of July 2024. Let the games begin. Election Commission declares 21st of September as the election date. Election bonds submitted to the Commission for President Ranil Wickremesinghe. The Supreme Rift. Supreme Court interim order preventing Deshabandhu Tennukon serving as the IGP invalid, claims the Prime Minister. Says the Constitutional Council is only answerable to Parliament, the supreme authority. Summoned. The Supreme Court summons Election Commission and the Minister of Justice to address issues pertaining to voting rights of prisoners in remand custody. Renewing revenue. Ports Authority to generate an additional income of 1.75 million rupees per month by allocating land for renewable energy projects.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
This is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to Derana First at 9. I'm Aditya Singh joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. Now in your top story this evening, setting the stage for the biggest event in Sri Lanka's political calendar this year, the Election Commission today officially announced the dates for the 2024 presidential election by way of an extraordinary gazette notification. Accordingly, the presidential polls will be held on the 21st of September, while the nomination for the candidates has been scheduled for the 15th of August. Following the announcement of the election dates, several candidates placed their election deposits with the Election Commission, including President Ranil Wickremesinghe.
The Election Commission this morning published the extraordinary gazette notification announcing the dates for the 2024 presidential election. According to the Gazette notification, the poll for the presidential election will be held on the 21st of September. Meanwhile, the nomination of candidates has been scheduled for the 15th of August. The Election Commission added that candidates will be able to place their election deposits with the Commission starting from 8:30 a.m. today until 12 noon on the 14th of August. A deposit of 50,000 rupees will be required for a candidate nominated by a recognized political party, while a candidate nominated by any other political party or by an elector will require a deposit of 75,000 rupees. Following the publication of the Gazette, a media briefing was convened by the Election Commission.
From today onward, the provisions of the Elections Act will come into effect. Accordingly, promoting political parties or their candidates as well as engaging in other activities prohibited by the Elections Act will be punishable by law. I request all candidates, their supporters and all others to support the Election Commission in conducting a fair and free election.
පොලිස්පතිවරයෙක් නැහැ. දැන් වැඩ බලන පොලිස්පතිවරයෙක්වත් තාම පත් කරලා නැහැ. අපි දන්නවා දැන් අපේක්ෂකයෙක් විදියට එනවා රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මහත්මයා. ඔහුට පුළුවන් ද යම් විදියකට වැඩ බලන පොලිස්පතිවරයෙක් පත් කරන්න.
පොලිස්පතිවරයෙක් හෝ වැඩ බලන පොලිස්පතිවරයෙක්. An IGP or an acting IGP will be appointed in due course. Until such time, we will coordinate our future operations with the senior DIG in charge of the election division. The Constitutional Council will oversee the legalities pertaining to the appointment of the IGP.
Following the official announcement of the date for the presidential election, several candidates arrived at the offices of the Election Commission in Rajagiriya in order to place their election deposits. President's Counsel Ronald C. Pereira placed bonds on behalf of President Ranil Wickremesinghe, who is set to contest the election as an independent candidate.
Ranil Wickremesinghe මැතිතුමා වෙනුවෙන් අපතන්පත් කිරීමට ආවේ.
එක්සත් ජාතික පක්ෂය හැටියටද එතුමා පෙනී සිටින්නේ?
නෑ ස්වාධීන අපේක්ෂකයෙක් හැටියට.
Former parliamentarian Sarath Kirtiratne, who will contest as an independent candidate, ASP Lienige, who will contest under the Sri Lanka Labour Party, and Oshala Herath, who will be the candidate of the new Independent Front, also placed their deposits. Meanwhile, several high-ranking police officers arrived at the Election Commission premises to discuss matters pertaining to the election. In the meantime, the Ministerial Consultative Committee on Defence convened at the Parliamentary Complex, headed by State Minister of Defence Premita Bandara Tennukon. During the meeting, the State Minister instructed defence chiefs to take necessary measures to ensure the security of the presidential candidates, citizens and the entire country during the election period. Following the official announcement of the dates for the presidential election, PAFRL Sri Lanka convened a media briefing.
From today until the date of the poll, it is the responsibility of the citizens to probe the candidates and to study and compare their manifestos. Only by doing so can you select the correct leader for the country. All election observation organizations are ready to support the enforcement of the law, limiting the amount candidates can spend on their campaigns, which will be in effect for the first time this year.
Crunchy goodness for hunger on the go.
The Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna today revealed that the party will announce its candidate for the upcoming presidential polls on Monday, the 29th of June. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka Freedom Party announced that the party's Politburo is scheduled to convene on the 31st of June to discuss matters pertaining to the party's presidential candidate.
The Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna held a discussion on matters pertaining to the party's candidate for the upcoming presidential election at the party headquarters this morning under the patronage of the party's founder Basil Rajapaksa.
The party Politburo is expected to convene on the 29th to discuss matters pertaining to the presidential candidate. We believe that a decision will be taken in that regard.
We will nominate a candidate who is capable of stabilizing the economy and taking the country forward. Our nominee will be a candidate who meets the expectations of the youth by bringing out structural and qualitative transformation in administration. There is a group of individuals who say so. We did not attempt to divide the government, but that led to a split within the party. However, we do not engage in such trivial politics. We will discuss and make a decision on the 29th.
As the SLFP, we will choose a candidate to support after the party's Central Working Committee and Politburo convene and discuss the matter on Wednesday. However, we can say that the presidential candidate whom we work for will be the president of this country.
As the party's secretary, I am responsible. We, as the SLFP, will gather tomorrow and we will decide whom to support. I fully support the decision of the party.
There were questions about the uncertainty of holding the elections, and now we are asked about what is happening. What must be done is to accept the challenge of contesting as an independent candidate. We will contest under a common logo and it will be disclosed in the near future.
Horizon Campus 2024 intake. Register now.
Now, the Supreme Court today ordered the issuance of a notice to the Election Commission, the Minister of Justice and relevant authorities to present facts regarding the voting rights of prisoners in remand custody and to appear before the court on the 8th of August. This decision follows the consideration of a petition seeking the establishment of guidelines to facilitate voting rights for remand prisoners in the upcoming election.
The Supreme Court has ordered the issuance of a notice to the Chairman of the Election Commission and its members, Minister of Justice Vijayadasa Rajapaksa, the Commissioner General of Prisons and other respondents named in the petition, directing them to appear before the court on the 8th of August. This order was issued to the attorney representing the petitioner, a board member of the Committee for Protecting the Rights of Prisoners, Sudesh Nandimal de Silva, during today's consideration of his petition seeking voting rights for the remand prisoners. The petitioner asserts that under the country's constitution, a person is presumed innocent until convicted by a court of law and is therefore entitled to all fundamental rights guaranteed by the constitution. The petition highlights that Article 89 of the constitution specifies which prisoners are ineligible to vote, and this does not include suspects held in remand custody who have not been convicted. Therefore, the petitioner argues that there is no legal impediment preventing remand suspects from exercising their right to vote. According to data from the Prisons Department, as of May 2024, there are 19,867 individuals held in remand custody in Sri Lanka, corresponding to 64.7% of the total prison population. The petitioner further requests that the Supreme Court instruct the Election Commission to issue guidelines to relevant parties to ensure that remand prisoners can exercise their right to vote in the upcoming elections.
Now, tensions ran high in Parliament today as Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena claimed invalid the interim order issued by the Supreme Court, preventing Deshabandhu Tennukon from holding the office as the country's IGP. Prime Minister Gunawardena emphasized that the court cannot overturn the approval granted by the Constitutional Council for the appointment of the current Inspector General of the Police.
ශ්‍රේෂ්ඨාධිකරණය පොලිස් ප්‍රතිමතුමාගේ
The Supreme Court has issued an interim order preventing Deshabandhu Tennakon from serving as Sri Lanka's Inspector General of the Police. According to Article 42, Clause A2 of the Constitution, unless the Constitutional Council has approved such an acting position based on the President's recommendation, no individual can be appointed to the post of IGP for a period exceeding 14 days. Pursuant to the existing constitution, the President does not have the authority to appoint a person to the position of acting IGP. Therefore, the Supreme Court cannot expect the President to appoint an officer to the acting IGP position. According to the Police Ordinance, administrative powers of the police are vested in the IGP. There are no legal provisions preventing the IGP from performing his duties. Consequently, the President cannot appoint an acting IGP and simultaneously prevent the current IGP from performing his duties. The former IGP remains the IGP of the police and the position has not been vacated. The Constitutional Council operates as a legislative body in accordance with the Constitution. Thus, the decisions of the Council are considered to be constitutional decisions. The Constitutional Council is accountable only to Parliament, which is the supreme authority. A court cannot question the decisions of the Constitutional Council. Therefore, the Supreme Court does not have the authority to investigate or issue orders regarding the Council. As such, the interim order is not valid according to law.
The Supreme Court has clearly issued a verdict. In respect of this verdict, the procedure for appointing the IGP should be followed as provided in the Constitution. The assertion that the Supreme Court's verdict is invalid is incorrect. How can one claim that the interim order preventing the IGP from performing his duties is proper when he has come to the Ministry of Defence in civil attire to control the police?
The IGP never reported in person to the Ministry of Defence. That statement is false and misleading to the public.
It is important to understand the distinction between the terms may and shall in legal context. The core issue is whether the IGP position has been vacated and who has the authority to vacate it. The Supreme Court can prevent someone from performing their duties, which has occurred. However, the court cannot issue an order to vacate the position. If the appointment was made by a constitutional body, any reversal must be sought through the relevant institution. If the position has not been vacated, how can an acting position be appointed? If we need to vacate the position, how should that be done?
I am astonished by the arguments of the leader of the House. Deshabandhu was not appointed during the Constitutional Council meeting, but after its conclusion. This is what the Supreme Court has pointed out as the error.
MP Kiriella, can you specify where that is stated in the Constitution? You appear to be misinterpreting it.
The court prevented the appointment because it was deemed illegal. The President cannot evade this issue. He remains the President to this day.
Various issues have been raised regarding this matter. The primary accusation is that a wrong decision was made by me concerning Clause E of Article 41 of the Constitution. I must state that no wrong decisions were made. The decision was made after thorough consideration and in accordance with the Constitution. Regardless of interpretation, no mistakes were made. Currently, it seems that even the President is unable to make a decision. If I am incorrect, you may challenge it in court.
Now, leader of the National People's Power, Anurukumara Dissanayake, emphasizes that a vacancy in the position of the Inspector General of Police is not required in order to appoint an acting Inspector General of Police. He made this statement while inaugurating the NPP's Centre for Monitoring Elections in Battaramulla today.
The National People Power Centre for Monitoring Elections was inaugurated today in Jayanthipura, Battaramulla under the patronage of the party's leader Anurukumara Dissanayake.
Ranil Wickremesinghe ශ්‍රේෂ්ඨාධිකරණය හරහා උත්සාහ දැරුවා බලෙන් බලයින්දින්.
Ranil Wickremesinghe tried to remain in power through the Supreme Court's influence. Since he was unable to do so, he has now entered into a legal battle with the apex court. Ranil Wickremesinghe should remember that a cabinet was formed while Mahinda Rajapaksa was appointed as Prime Minister in violation of the Constitution. However, in 2018, the Supreme Court ruled that the appointment of the Prime Minister and the cabinet was unconstitutional. Mahinda Rajapaksa's premiership leadership and the cabinet ministers' portfolios were invalidated by Supreme Court ruling. Now, as the election approaches, Ranil is avoiding the appointment of an IGP to create confusion in society. One of his earlier claims was that they will not hold an election and that there is no election to be held anyway. Now he is saying that he will not appoint an IGP and there is no vacancy to appoint an IGP anyway. You may recall that former IGP Pujit Jayasundara was sent on permanent leave and was replaced by C.D. Vikramaratne as the acting IGP for an extended period. Acting ministers have been appointed when the incumbent minister was abroad. It is not essential for a position to be vacant for an acting official to be appointed. Today, Dinesh Gunawardena made a special statement in Parliament regarding this issue. We challenged Dinesh Gunawardena to make this statement outside of Parliament. We challenged Deshabandhu Tennakoon to acknowledge any circular or order given to the police department as the IGP. Then you will see what happens. Ranil Wickremesinghe is proving every day that he is not suitable to lead this country in a civilized manner.
Now, the Cabinet of Ministers has approved President Ranil Wickremesinghe's Cabinet Memorandum to implement the National Agenda for Anti-Corruption. The relevant Cabinet decision aligns with the legal, organizational and strategic anti-corruption framework outlined in the International Monetary Fund's report on government diagnostics, technical assistance support.
The National Anti-Corruption Framework includes several key actions such as the full implementation of the anti-corruption legislation passed in 2023, the development of an effective action plan, regular progress reviews every 6 months, and ensuring adequate budget provisions for the action plan. Additionally, the framework calls for the creation of a clear national anti-corruption strategy for the period spanning from 2025 to 2029. As per the President's office, the framework also proposes amending the National Audit Act No. 19 of 2018 to expand the legal authority of the Auditor General. This includes provisions for presenting full reports on investigative audits to Parliament and allowing the Auditor General to authorise criminal investigations into fraud and corruption revealed through such audits. Furthermore, the framework empowers the Auditor General to hold senior officials accountable and to levy surcharges from them, including those responsible for financial management for failing to meet oversight and accountability standards. The National Anti-Corruption Framework suggests setting up a robust system for asset disclosure and conflict of interest management. It includes implementing regulations related to conflict of interest rules and asset disclosure procedures as outlined in the anti-corruption legislation. This framework will define what constitutes a conflict of interest, mandate public disclosure, provide guidelines for managing conflicts of interest, enforce penalties for officials who fail to comply, and require reporting on relevant performance.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe noted the importance of implementing plans aimed at technological development and establishing proper education in order to ensure Sri Lanka's swift economic development in the island nation's post-economic crisis era. Addressing a gathering in Rambukana, President Wickremesinghe went on to point out that dividing into factions based on political lines is pointless if there is no realization on proper utilization of technology.
Smart classroom equipment was provided to the Rambukana Parakrama Mahavidyalaya as part of the Digital Economy for the Village program under the patronage of President Ranil Wickremesinghe. The program is a joint initiative by the Ministries of Education and Technology to equip 62 schools and 42 piriven.
When Sri Lanka was bankrupt, I was thinking of how we must develop after coming out of bankruptcy and how we must generate necessary foreign reserves. I understood that proper knowledge, a digital economy and technology are essential factors. Therefore, we must begin to implement plans for technological development. One facet of this process is utilizing modern technology for businesses and for agriculture modernization. The other is to incorporate these technologies into schools. It is the students who will continue this process. Therefore, we will continue the project to install smart classrooms in schools and pirivens. During my trip to Indonesia in May, I met with Elon Musk and invited him to visit Sri Lanka. We have issued the relevant license and all that is left is for him to come to Sri Lanka and launch Starlink. I will ensure proper education and technological development is provided. It is your responsibility to properly utilize these facilities. I call up upon everyone to unite and join us in this journey. There is no point in creating divisional based on political differences instead of understanding what it is we are trying to achieve by introducing these technologies. While thanking them for their their recent support, I call on all political parties to unite and join me in our journey.
මං යලිත් හැම පක්ෂයෙන්ම ඉල්ලනවා මේ දුන්න සහයෝගයට ස්තුති කරලා අපි ඔක්කොම එකතු වෙලා ඉදිරියට යමු කියලා ප්‍රකාශ කරන්න.
Star Dishwasher Dally Hill ඉඳුල් පහසුවෙන් සේදේ. Star Dishwasher Magic Tub එක.
Welcome back. Now the Sri Lanka Port Authority has allocated 43 hectares of land in Kappalthura, Trincomalee for a 20 megawatt solar power project to Sunscape Project Company, a subsidiary of the Sri Lanka firm Celsec Renewables. Following the recent signing of the agreements, Minister of Port Shipping and Aviation Nimal Siripala De Silva stated that Sunscape is the first firm to receive land from the Ports Authority among the potential investors who have signed memorandum of understanding with the authority.
Accordingly, the land will be leased to the Sunscape Project Company on a 30-year basis. The Ports Authority said through the leasing it is expected to generate an income of 1.75 million rupees per month for the Ports Authority. The signing of the agreement took place on Wednesday between the Ports Authority and Sunscape Ports Authority at the Ministry of Port Shipping and Aviation Auditorium.
Out of several investors to whom we entered into MOU to give the land, this is the first company which has fulfilled their obligations towards the other institutions and have obtained the necessary approval. So therefore, it is a happy moment for us to send our contribution towards the renewable energy policy of the government office and achieve the necessary target of 70% in 2030. And I also would like to invite the other investors also to embark upon the project which they have selected without any delay.
Now the SPA edged down as a result of price losses in counters such as Commercial Bank, SMB Leasing, non-voting and SMB Leasing, with the turnover crossing 575 million rupees. The benchmark all-share index settled 0.06% lower at 11,633.38 points, while the S&P Sri Lanka 20 edged down by 0.02% to close at 3,385.63 points. Meanwhile, during the week, the SPI and the S&P Sri Lanka 20 lost by 0.8% and 1.3% respectively, whilst recording an average daily turnover of 577 million rupees. Mixed interest was observed in Hat National Bank, Commercial Bank and Nations Trust Bank, while retail interest was noted in Maharaja Foods, SMB Leasing, non-voting and voting. Trading volume on the index meanwhile rose to 31 million shares from 20 million shares during the previous session. The banking sector was the top contributor to market turnover, while the capital goods sector came in second. Foreign participation in market activity remained at subdued levels, with foreigners closing as net sellers. That's all the news we have for you tonight. Thank you. Have a great night.